Don Felder, former guitarist for Eagles, has finally broken his silence about his former bandmate Joe Walsh, touching on their struggles with substance use, personal loss, controversies, their time in the band, and the complex nature of their relationship. The contrasting guitar styles of Walsh and Felder helped shape the Eagles' iconic sound. Felder's structured, disciplined approach balanced against Walsh's wild, bluesy spontaneity. Yet behind the music, tensions brewed. Felder's departure from the band created a rift, especially as Walsh's carefree, party-loving lifestyle clashed with Felder's more introverted, focused personality. Felder, often seen as calm and disciplined, became frustrated with what he saw as Walsh's lack of commitment, particularly during the turbulent 70s and 80s, when Walsh's substance issues disrupted the band's cohesion. Joe Walsh, born November 20th, 1947, faced early tragedy when his father, a U.S. Air Force pilot, died in a plane crash in Okinawa in 1949. Adopted by his stepfather at age 5, he kept Fiddler as his middle name and began playing guitar at age 10, inspired by bands like The Ventures and later the Beatles. He started his music journey with local bands and rose to prominence with the James Gang. Deeply affected by the Kent State Massacre in 1970, he dropped out of college to pursue music full-time. Walsh's career includes 12 solo studio albums, multiple live and compilation albums, and work with various bands, including James Gang, Barnstorm, and Eagles. After leaving James Gang in 1972, Walsh formed Barnstorm, but their work was marketed as his solo material. By 1975, he was invited to join the Eagles, replacing Bernie Leadon. His first album with the band, Hotel California, was a landmark success. The dual guitar solos by Walsh and Felder on the title track were once voted the best guitar solos ever in a Guitars magazine poll and ranked 8th by Guitar World. Despite initial doubts, particularly from Don Henley, about Walsh's wild persona, his hard rock energy contributed significantly to the Eagles' evolution. Life in the Fast Lane, based on one of his riffs, became a hit and established his place in the band. In 1977, all Eagles members except Felder contributed to Randy Newman's Little Criminals, signaling internal divisions. After the Eagles disbanded in 1980, Walsh continued to release solo material, though it didn't match his earlier success. Personally, Walsh endured profound tragedies. He married 5 times, including to Margie Walsh in the 60s, Stephanie Rhodes in the 70s, and finally to Marjorie Bach in 2008, sister of Barbara Bach and sister-in-law to Ringo Starr. One of his most heartbreaking experiences was the death of his daughter, Emma, born April 29, 1971, who died at just 3 years old in a car crash en route to nursery school. Her passing devastated Walsh. He memorialized her with a fountain and plaque at North Boulder Park in Colorado. He dedicated songs like Song for Emma and Help Me Through the Night to her on his album So What, stating that after her death, nothing else seemed meaningful. This tragedy also contributed to the breakdown of his second marriage. Adding to his struggles was his relationship with Stevie Nicks, which ended due to mutual substance abuse. Walsh later confided to a friend that he left Stevie because he feared one of them would die, and the other wouldn't be able to save them. Through all this, Walsh earned praise from rock legends like Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, and Pete Townsend. He was ranked 54th on Rolling Stone's list of the 100 greatest guitarists of all time in 2011. His legacy, through pain, triumph, and groundbreaking music, remains deeply etched in the history of rock and roll. Joe Walsh once admitted that his and Stevie Nicks' substance use had reached such a dangerous level that neither of them could survive if they continued together. So, in a moment of clarity, he chose to leave the relationship to save them both. Beyond these struggles, Walsh has also battled with ADHD, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and Asperger's syndrome. He struggled particularly with alcohol during the early years of his career, but has been in recovery since 1993. A major turning point came in 1994, when he blacked out on a flight to Paris, woke up with his passport in hand, and couldn't remember boarding the plane. That frightening moment changed his life, and he's remained sober ever since. His relationship with Don Felder was layered and often strained. Both men were brilliant guitarists in the Eagles, but while their collaboration shaped the band's iconic sound, their contrasting personalities led to friction. Felder was already a member when Walsh joined in 1975, and while Felder leaned toward technical precision, Walsh brought a bluesy, free-form energy. Together, they created intricate guitar work, most notably the legendary solo on Hotel California, but their dynamic was tense behind the scenes. Felder recalled the beauty of their unspoken understanding during performances, where one would step back while the other took the lead, a give-and-take rhythm that couldn't be taught, only felt. Despite this musical synergy, personal differences, and internal band politics drove a wedge between them. Felder remembered feeling increasingly sidelined, especially after Walsh joined, as Don Henley and Glenn Frey, who were steering the band's direction, gravitated toward Walsh's rock and roll charisma. Felder often felt like an outsider, even when his contributions, like the Hotel California solo, were publicly celebrated. Over time, resentment grew. When Felder was fired from the band in 2001 following personal and professional clashes with Henley and Frey, Walsh remained with the group. While Walsh wasn't directly involved in Felder's dismissal, his continued alignment with Henley and Frey made Felder feel further betrayed. The once powerful musical connection between Felder and Walsh deteriorated into silence. Though Felder has clarified that he isn't on bad terms with everyone in the Eagles, his relationship with Walsh never fully recovered. Walsh, for his part, has taken a more diplomatic stance, avoiding public conflict and choosing to focus on the music rather than the drama. Their relationship was a mix of remarkable collaboration and unresolved tension, a reflection of the larger internal conflicts that plagued the Eagles during their peak. Despite the fallout, both men were instrumental to the band's legacy. Felder later praised fellow musician Tommy Shaw's sticks for his all-around talent, his ability to sing, write, and play guitar, calling him a monster on stage. In contrast, Felder implied that he and Walsh lacked that full-circle camaraderie. Their connection may have produced timeless music, but the personal harmony was never quite as lasting. There was never a sense of competition between Joe Walsh and Don Felder. No fight for the spotlight. Just two guitarists who discovered the perfect groove together. Their musical partnership was built on mutual respect and shared understanding, gracefully allowing one another to step forward or fall back in the rhythm of a song. It was never about proving who was better. It was a fun, creative challenge. Walsh would play something wild, and Felder would try to top it, not out of rivalry but out of inspiration. At times, Walsh's struggles with substance use caused setbacks, and Felder, showing his deep care, once had to drive him to rehab. They were close. So close they left notes for each other in the studio. But after Felder's departure from the Eagles, rumors swirled that Walsh was asked to cut off contact with him to stay in the band. Tension had always simmered beneath the surface. Glenn Frey and Don Henley had a famously contentious relationship with Felder, and many believe his firing boiled down to money and power. Frey and Henley reportedly insisted they deserved a larger cut than Felder and Walsh, seeing themselves as the true stars. Walsh and bassist Timothy B. Schmidt accepted their roles as hired hands, willing to support the dream without demanding more. But Felder, having been with the band since their third album, believed he had earned more, and he wasn't wrong. Still, the Eagles were always under Henley and Frey's control. When the band reunited in 1994 for the Hell Freezes Over tour, Felder was part of it until he questioned the financial arrangement again. This time, it cost him his place. He sued for wrongful termination and breach of contract, eventually settling out of court. Felder later explained that everything in the band revolved around Don and Glenn. They owned it, they controlled it, and they paid themselves the most. Even after all these years, Felder could still feel the anger and venom, especially from Glenn Frey. When the band celebrated its history with reunion tours, Bernie Leadon was welcomed back, and Randy Meisner, though too ill to perform, was honored. But Felder wasn't even invited. Still, he found some joy in watching old footage, laughing at how skinny they were and how long their hair used to be. Outside the Eagles, Felder continued to tour and record with legends like the Bee Gees, Diana Ross, and Stevie Nicks. And he even scored a hit in 1981 with the title song for the cult film Heavy Metal, a track that could have appeared on the Eagles' last pre-breakup record if not for the band's rigid songwriting rules. In the Eagles, Felder said everything had to fit inside the Eagles' world. Anything outside of it didn't belong. One of Felder's deepest disappointments was Walsh's request for him to just sign the contract during the final financial negotiations, essentially asking him to accept being just another hired hand. That was the last conversation they ever had. Felder didn't contribute to the band's next album, and many fans believe the music would have been stronger had he been involved. Behind the scenes, Felder tried to negotiate for better terms, but Walsh, perhaps weary of conflict, urged him to give in. Walsh always had a way of getting along with the band's leadership, while Felder never trusted them. Since Felder's departure, many have speculated that Walsh might have signed an agreement barring him from working or even socializing with Felder, possibly because Felder was seen as a traitor. It's tragic, because together, Walsh and Felder had remarkable on-stage chemistry. They created some of the greatest rock music in history. Separating such a powerful creative duo remains one of rock's great losses. For Felder, the most painful part is that Joe Walsh never stood up for himself, or for their friendship. Felder's revelations about Walsh are both heartbreaking and enlightening, offering insight into the emotional toll behind the music. Walsh's life has been marked by tragedy, from the death of his father when he was a child, to the devastating loss of his 3-year-old daughter in a car crash, to the heartbreak of multiple failed marriages. His battles with substance use, lack of confidence, and personal demons not only shaped his life, but also affected his relationship with Felder. Though their musical chemistry was undeniable, their personalities and approaches eventually pulled them apart. Even when things seemed to improve, Felder's firing from the Eagles left a deep scar, and Walsh's choice to remain in the band ultimately widened the gap between them. Their story is a powerful reminder of how even the strongest musical partnerships can be undone by personal struggles and industry politics. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the next video shown on your screen.